Part 86. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 851. Chapter 851 The unfilial son is back. Ji also knows this truth in his heart, but whenever he thinks about his family being separated, he still feels uncomfortable. The uncle and nephew talked for a long time, their voices were very low, but the laughter of the two soldiers and the guards carried far away. Li Laosi gave his nephew a few more instructions and left with his soldiers. Before leaving, he signaled to his soldiers to leave a silver coin and invited the officers to drink tea. The officers sent him off respectfully, and everyone started talking about it at the end. This fourth general of the Li family is really mighty. I heard he is the most brave general of the Northern Expedition Army. I've heard about it too, and if you have done great service this time, the court will definitely give you a reward. The main reason is that such a powerful person is so polite to us, unlike some people who wish they had eyes on their foreheads. They are clearly asking us to do things, but they still want us to fawn over him. It's so stupid that I want to give him 2 slaps. Haha, that's what I said. Soon, the prison boss came back. He heard that Li Laosi had been here and had given him a reward, so he sent someone to buy a few boxes of snacks and distributed them to everyone. Originally, such a good thing was called a banquet, where everyone would eat together and have a good time. Now 3 meals a day are taken care of by cyclamen, and everyone is so greedy to eat that they can't help but go to other people's banquets. I simply bought some snacks and took them back with me. The children and the elderly at home were also happy. Not to mention how lively the city was, how the DPRK changed after the Northern Expedition returned from victory. Just saying that Broken Gold Beach has been extremely lively since dawn. The village chief specially changed into a new coat and trousers, and also took out his new smoking pole. He walked around the village and happily directed everyone, killing pigs and sheep, and setting up stoves to light fires. Over at the Hot Spring Valley, arrangements were made yesterday. Today and tomorrow we will be closed to all guests, leaving space for the soldiers who have returned from the expedition to wash away their dust. This is almost an ironclad rule set in the village. Although the guests complained a little, none of them made a fuss. Although the literary style of Jiangnan was prevalent, civil servants also held great power in the court. Readers will subconsciously raise their chins high and disdain the gruff soldiers. But in the final analysis, they all know that these soldiers have fought back with their long swords and their lives to live a stable life now. Even if some people feel disdainful, they dare not show it. After all, that conscription was a lesson learned from the past. Maybe they would be thrown into the dock barracks the next moment before they could laugh at them. Orange Mrs. Lee and others were worried about home and rushed back from cyclamen early. Then he joined the busy team while talking about how exciting it would be for the emperor to welcome the Northern Expedition in person. By the time the sun reaches the top of the head, the whole new village and the second village have been filled with the aroma of food. It was rare for the naughty boys to not go out and run around, waiting for their meal. Even the miracle Dr. John came out of his yard, changed into a rare pair of clean clothes, and was waiting to drink a celebratory drink with him. Waiting until the sun turned slightly to the west, finally news came from the boys from the second village. Come back, come back. The Marquis is back. The fourth master is back too, with a lot of soldiers. Everyone hurriedly rushed out of the courtyard, where dust and smoke were already billowing in the distance. The Marquis was wearing a black bearskin cloak embroidered with gold thread. He was followed by Li Laosi, who was also covered in armor and wore a red cloak. The two of them are dignified and noble, while the other is tall and brave. Following behind him were 500 cavalrymen, like heroes flying in the clouds and mist, crashing in from the sky. Everyone couldn't help shouting excitedly. Master Ho, Master Ho. 4 masters, 4th masters. The naughty boys even jumped and shouted and looked around. For a while, there was only the joy and bustle of reunion in and outside the village. When he was still a few feet away from the door, Li Laosi jumped off the horse, quickly ran to his mother, and fell to his knees. "Mom, the unfilial son is back." Mrs. Li's eyes were red and she tried her best to hold back her tears. She hugged her son and patted his back. "What do you mean by an unfilial son? My mother's son is the best in the world. You fought for the country, and my mother is proud of you." Li Laosi looked at his mother's grey temples and was choked with sobs that he could not speak. At this time, Mr. Ho also dismounted and walked over, bending down to salute Mrs. Li. "Auntie, we are back. It'll be good to come back, it'll be good to come back." Mrs. Li helped her son up and looked at Mr. Ho up and down. She was completely relieved when there was really no injury. "Dad, foster father," Jiyan couldn't help but jump out and said happily, "You guys just entered the city so majestic that it made me want to join the army and become a female general." Jiyan is now a grown-up girl, so she can no longer hug her father and adoptive father casually, but she can still hold their arms and talk and laugh a few words. Mr. Ho and Mr. Li saw the daughter they had been thinking about for more than half a year. She was now wearing a bright red brocade coat and a snow silk skirt. Her palm-sized white face was smiling like a flower. She was even more beautiful and lively than when she left. They were also happy, rarely smiling. The iron and blood all over the body are cold and hard, like winter snow melting instantly when encountering the warm Sunday. For a moment, everyone gathered around Mr. Ho and Li Laosi and walked inside. The village chief, Uncle Zhao, and others also called to the 500 cavalry and quickly dismounted to rest. The horses were led away, fed with fodder and watered. The soldiers were sent to the courtyards of the Li family, Ye family, and Wen family. Linoleum sheds were erected in the 3 yards to protect them from the wind and snow. At this moment, the shed was filled with tables and chairs, and there was an iron bucket burning wood in the corner of the yard for warmth. The young men brought basins of hot water and asked the soldiers to wash their hands and faces briefly, and then everyone sat down at the table. Lamb stewed with radish, chicken stewed with mushrooms and potatoes, butchered vegetables, etc., are all served hot in large pottery pots to the table, as well as large baskets of 1,000-layer sesame pancakes. The soldiers had experienced dangers and fighting for more than half a year, and they were covered with dust from the battle, which gradually dissipated in the aroma of the food. The village chief, Uncle Zhao, Lu Baiatu, and others greeted the soldiers. The village chief waved his pipe and pot and said excitedly, "Brothers, eat with ease. Today I killed 6 big fat pigs, not to mention those sheep, chickens, ducks, geese, and big carp. Don't worry about making your family poor, our family is rich. You are fighting outside and keeping your home safe. It is your duty to cook something delicious for you at home. Don't be polite. Hurry up and eat, pour the wine, pour the wine. Yeah, you're welcome. You'll be home when you arrive at Broken Gold Beach." Uncle Zhao personally took the wine jar and poured wine for the soldiers. "After a while, we'll have a full meal, and then go to the hot spring valley to take a good bath. Over there today it's closed, and I'm just waiting for you to come back and wash your clothes. After washing, then take a long nap on the hot bed. No matter how tired you are, you will be relieved by most of it." The soldiers thanked him one after another. "Thank you, Uncle. Thank you, bro. It's better to go home." At this time, Brother Cat came to invite people. "Grandpa, the village chief, the marquis, and my 4th uncle are all waiting for you to come over and have a drink." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 852. Chapter 852, The Most Joyful Celebration Wine. "Okay, it's coming, the village chief responded quickly with a smile. He then called on Yeshan, Jinglichhan, and the villagers to help entertain the soldiers, and then he took Uncle Zhao, Lu Baiatu, and others to the Li family yard. Of the 500 soldiers, most were veterans, but a small number were eating at Broken Gold Beach for the first time. At this moment, we are drinking big bowls of wine and eating big mouthfuls of meat. We can't even get the white flour steamed buns to serve at the banquet. The staple food is grilled sesame pancakes. Some recruits couldn't help being surprised and happy, and asked the veterans next to them, "Brother, if we just eat like this, we won't eat up General Lee's house, right?" The old soldier knew that this little brother had a poor background, so he laughed and gave him a big piece of meat, and said, "Don't worry. Do you know where this is? It's Broken Gold Beach, a treasure land blessed with feng shui. Not to mention anything else, the jade melons grown in the summer are worth an ingot of silver each. There are also fruits on the mountain, 5 or 6 of them are more expensive than a basket of them. When we left in the spring, there didn't seem to be that many pig houses and chicken coops at the foot of the mountain, and no greenhouses were built. I guess the princess had some good ideas and there was new money in the village." After saying that, he saw the soldier's eyes wide open in surprise, so he gave him a tug, and said with a bit of pride, "You don't understand even if you talk too much. In the future, you will understand if you come back with General Lee often. It's best if your boy has the ability to join the Marquis or General Lee's bodyguards, then he can settle down in the second village. That would be a great event. You can feel at ease fighting outside, and your wife, children will also enjoy happiness in the second village. There are noodle workshops, vermicelli workshops, and snack workshops in Erkin. I can find a job in any of them, and the wages are quite high." This kind of conversation is happening at almost every table. The villagers were naturally proud after hearing this. They joined in the joking and introduced the new changes in the village to these new soldiers and veterans. In the courtyard of the Lee family next door, banquets were held in the main room and the east and west rooms. Mr. Ho, Li Laosi, Li Zhensheng, Li Laoer, Li Laosan and Mr. Wen, together with Lu Haiheng, Mr. Zhang, Dr. Zhang, the village chief, Uncle Zhao, Lu Baiatu and others who came to join in the fun, filled the hall. Westinghouse is occupied by the Jiaran brothers, Hostings Hyman, Xiaja, Lu Yang, Gu Li, and Guo Wenhao. Of course Gilai came here with Mr. Zhang. And Guo Wenhao has been serving pen and ink beside Mr. Wen recently, and Mr. Wen also brought him back to join in the fun. In the east room, of course, Mrs. Li took Mrs. Wen, Huanayang, Aunt Wu, sister-in-law Lu, Tao Hongying, Zhao Yuru, Waner, Wenjuan, etc., and they also sat at a full table. There is also a small table on the Kong, where Aunt He, Aunt Tian, sister-in-law Kayang and Dongmei are looking after the children of Xing and others as they eat. Shui Ling and Shui Yun took Grandma Chang, Grandma Lin, Xiaoqing, and others to serve the banquet and add dishes to the meal. Shui Ling and Shui Yun were used to it, but this was the first time for Grandma Chang and others to see such a lively house. Especially, it was the first time for them to see Mr. Ho and Li Laosi. Li Laosi is just paying it forward. No matter how powerful he is still the fourth master of the family. But Mr. Ho is different. That was a first-class military lord in Tianwu, commanding an army of 100,000 men, and he was also the emperor's cousin. It could be said that he was extremely powerful. Now he eats and laughs with everyone, just like the boy next door, handsome, gentle and approachable. It would be fine to say that he was polite to Lu Haiheng, Mr. Wen, and others, since they were all officials in the same dynasty. But the village chief, Uncle Zhao, and others are the old men in the village, and the Marquis is actually very close to them, and even poured wine for the village chief himself. Mother Chang and Grandma Lin are older. Even if they are surprised in their hearts, they will not show it on their faces. But the maids Xiaoqing, Wan Qiu, and Xiaodong couldn't help it. They couldn't help but look at them a few more times, and Xiaodong even blushed. Shui Ling noticed it with his sharp eyes and immediately sent Xiaodong to the kitchen to watch the fire. Ji Yan sat between the Marquis and his father. Sometimes he was eating shrimps peeled by his father, and sometimes he was taking a bite of meatballs from his adoptive father. His happy head was filled with bubbles. Not only are her two great protectors back, but also because her father and adoptive father are both safe and sound. You must know that the battlefield is dangerous, even the Delugo immortal cannot guarantee that he will remain unscathed. There is nothing more joyful than the safe return of loved ones. There were many people talking, and everyone deliberately avoided some sensitive topics. They only talked about this year's harvest, the business in the hot spring valley, the construction of pig houses, chicken farms, and greenhouses in each village, and then asked how the war was going. The feast lasted until the sun went down, the dishes were replenished twice, and 5 jars of wine were emptied. At this moment, 500 soldiers were already in the hot spring, splashing happily. Luz Haiheng drank a lot and asked someone to deliver a message to his family. Then he took his 2 sons to rest at Sujintan. He ran to Wen's house and slept with Mr. Wen. Jimin and Jiaja are of course going to make a fuss with brother Li and brother Mao. Mr. Wen felt sorry for the young disciple who was always lonely at home, so he left him to live with the boys, hoping that he would become a little lively. Mr. Ho chatted with the old lady for a few words, then went back to wash up and change clothes. Everyone in the Li family closed the door, dismissed the maids and women, and sat together to talk about themselves. Wanner and Wenjuan were nieces and nephews, so they couldn't sit there for long, so they took the children back to the backyard after listening to a few words. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru were busy leading people to clean up 3 courtyards and place 500 soldiers. After a while, Mrs. Li was left in the room with her sons and good news. Mrs. Li sat her youngest son beside her and asked him carefully about what he was eating, drinking, and wearing outside and whether he was injured. Old Li answered them all one by one, and even opened his clothes to show his chest and back. There were indeed no new scars, so old Mrs. Li was completely relieved. Li Laosi looked at his daughter smiling and saying nothing, feeling a little guilty. How can you not be injured when you are on the battlefield? The reason why he showed his chest and back to me was because the injury was on his leg. The inside of his left leg was penetrated by a spear thrown by the barbarians, leaving a hole. If it weren't for the overbearing medicine given by his daughter to stop the bleeding quickly, he would probably be lame when he walks now. Fortunately, Jiyan did not intend to expose his father. He just made a pot of honey water with his own hands and gave it to his father and uncles to relieve their hangover. Li Laosi drank up the honey water in the cup and quickly changed the topic. Mom, I went to Jingzayin to meet Ji Yi this morning. This kid is really big-hearted, he doesn't even care about being in jail, he actually picked up a martial arts lunatic and fights with people every day. Sure enough, when talking about this grandson, Mrs. Li immediately scolded him, this brat, the family should just ignore him and let him suffer a little so that he can remember. You've come so far back to Zindu, and you're going to cause trouble without consulting your family. Li Laosi showed no mercy at all when he sold his nephew, and said quickly, just now at the wine table, the head guard Lu said that Lu Yang found a wife for himself in the south. Furthermore, his father-in-law's family is well known in the local area, which is also a big help to Lu Yang. I wonder what Ji Yi is thinking, he's so busy with everything, so he's not in a hurry to find a wife. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 853. Chapter 853, Having no mistakes is the biggest mistake. That's right, he is just a few months younger than Jiehuan. Look at Jiehuan, the child is already 3 years old, and his wife doesn't know where she is yet. Mrs. Li gritted her teeth angrily. Li Laosan felt sorry for his nephew and persuaded him with a naive smile, Mom, maybe Ji Yi hasn't figured it out yet. Don't worry about it. Maybe one day the fate will come, and we will get married and have children soon. That makes sense. Mrs. Lee thought of her family joy. Although she got into a little trouble at the beginning, she was happy to marry Wenjuan and soon became pregnant and gave birth to a child. Li Laoer also smiled and said, "The men sent out today came back with the news, and the fleet of prisoners sent by the Hailan army will arrive in 2 or 3 days. When the time comes, with General Tang's help, Ji Yi will be able to come out easily. It's just that the reputation is definitely not good. This guy doesn't have to think about finding a wife in Zindu." Li Zhensheng waved his hand nonchalantly, "Then let Ji Yi find a wife in Quanzhou. The sky is high over there and the emperor is far away. Even if they know about the trouble he has caused, not many people will mind. After all, there are so few people who have been to Zindu that no one even mentioned it to the emperor, let alone the queen's brother. Rather than caring about these things, Quanzhou people are more concerned about when all the Japanese pirates will be killed, and when they don't have to worry about going fishing." Everyone nodded. This is indeed the truth. Mrs. Lee also wanted to ask how many days her younger son could stay at home, but she found that her younger son was already leaning in his chair and snoring. She was so distressed that her eyes were red, and she quickly shouted to Li Zhensheng and others, "Hurry and help the 4th child back to the house and let him sleep well. This child is probably exhausted. Don't call him. Let him sleep until he has had enough." Li Zhensheng and Li Laosan carried Li Laosi one by one and walked all the way back to the backyard. Soon, Tao Hongying was also kicked back by Mrs. Li. "At this time, what else do you have to worry about at home? Taking good care of your returning husband is the most important thing." Jiyan was too full to eat and was worried that his adoptive father had drunk a lot of wine, so he called Shuiling and brought a pot of honey water to the next door. The Marquis changed into a dark blue brocade robe, with cloud patterns embroidered on the cuffs and neckline with silver thread. Looking very simple, it perfectly matches his cold and naturally noble temperament. He had just taken a shower, and his black hair was not completely dry and was hanging behind his back. His expression was even more lazy and casual. Jiyan let out an exaggerated wow as soon as he entered the door, and then sat down opposite his adoptive father dejectedly. The Marquis looked confused and couldn't help but ask, "What's going on? Is there something wrong? Or have you thought of something difficult?" Jiyan sighed, wrinkled her delicate little face, shook her head and replied, "Hey, I was just thinking, I will definitely not have a stepmother in the future. I am afraid that no woman in the world can be worthy of such an outstanding man as my adopted father. It's pity that my adopted father, who is both civil and military, wants to be a bachelor." Mr. Ho was amused and laughed loudly. He stretched out his hand to rub the little girl's hair. "I thought the sky was falling, but it turned out to be such a small thing. My adoptive father has said that if Jiangbei is not taken back, he will never consider getting married. Besides, there is no need for you to get married since you are here to provide for your adoptive father until he is old and die." After saying that, he dropped the topic and asked, "You have been wronged for the past 6 months. Tell your adoptive father how to vent your anger on you." Jiyan smiled and poured honey water for her adoptive father. "There is no need for my adoptive father to take it out on me. Although the Wu family plotted against me, their whole family is now in prison, and young Master Wu was kicked to death by my 3rd brother. This is considered retribution. If our family continues to seize the Wu family, not to mention that it will be difficult to explain to Uncle Huang, I am afraid that everyone in the world will say that we have no mercy and will kill them all." Mr. Ho nodded. The situation was indeed like this. The little girl is very smart and sensible, it is not easy to think of these things. But it was precisely because of this that he felt more and more sorry for the little girl. Don't worry about the court or what outsiders say, you only care about yourself. If you are unhappy, you can deal with them how you want. Since they chose to bully you, they must take responsibility for their own actions. They brought this disastrous ending on themselves. Okay, I understand, Adoptive father Ji-Yin swayed her legs and smiled with joy. She suddenly remembered something and asked again, "Father, have the medicines I sent you before been used? I have saved a lot, and I can still take out about 100 kilograms. Do I need to send it to the dock military camp?" The Marquis nodded, with a flash of relief in his eyes. "Your batch of wounded medicine was delivered too timely. At least 200 wounded soldiers survived because of that batch of wounded medicine. There are currently more than 1,000 lightly and seriously injured soldiers in the dock military camp. I will rush there tomorrow. It would be better if you have wound medicine here. The wound medicine prepared by the Ministry of War is really..." The Marquis didn't finish his words, and he was obviously very dissatisfied with the Ministry of War. Ji-Yin did not want his adoptive father to be angry, so he quickly said, "Father, in addition to the medicine for wounds, I also took a lot of frostbite ointment, and the effect is very good. I just saw that my father has frostbite on his hands. I think ordinary soldiers must be more severely frostbitten. Why don't we take away the frostbite ointment tomorrow too? Let the soldiers soak their hands and feet in hot water before going to bed every day, and then apply ointment. They will be almost fully recovered in 3 days." The Marquis was pleasantly surprised when he heard this. "My Funiur's medical skills are getting better and better. I'm afraid Tianwu is the only one who has such an easy-to-use chilblain ointment. Of course, don't look at who my daughter is, she is the #1 genius in Tianwu." Ji-Yin raised her chin proudly and smiled, showing her small white teeth. Ho-Ye couldn't help laughing and ruffled her hair again, sighing in his heart. The chubby girl has grown into a slim girl, but she is still kind and cute, and still as dazzling as the little Sunday. At this time, someone suddenly knocked on the door. Yashin opened the door, and outside the door was Jiaran. Obviously Jiaran didn't expect his sister to be here, but he walked in anyway. Yashan got tea and then retreated, leaving Jiaran and Ji-Yin brother and sister sitting opposite the Marquis. The Marquis asked, "Is there something wrong with Jiaran?" Jiaran nodded and said, "Master Ho, you have just returned from the expedition. Logically speaking, I should not disturb you at this time. You should have a good rest. But there is something that concerns the safety of our family and even the entire Broken Gold Beach. I would like to ask Mr. Ho to help investigate." The Marquis raised his eyebrows but said nothing. Ji-Yin was surprised and asked, "Brother, what's going on? Could it be that the Wu family or the Wang family is causing trouble behind the scenes again?" Jiaran shook his head and said, "No, it's Mr. Jiang's bookboy Gu Li. I suspect there is something wrong with his identity. It's not that he has done anything to offend Sujintan and our family, it's just that he has been wandering since he was a child and was brought to our Sujintan after meeting Mr. Jiang. He worked as a bookboy for Mr. Jiang, and in the past 2 years he worked as a steward for you, taking care of Bianjian's business. At first glance, there is nothing wrong with this, but when you think about it carefully, there are a lot of doubts. In the previous poetry meeting of Mr. Mome, he showed much more knowledge than me, and he tried his best to hide it and act like a steward. Sometimes his demeanor was different from that of a slave. I tried several times, but he blocked me without any trace. Zheng He and the others also helped me find out about his past, and there was no trace of anything suspicious." He frowned when he heard the good news. "Gilai has always been taciturn, honest, and reliable. He has helped her take care of business for so long without making any mistakes. Think about it carefully, for a boy of 17 or 18 years old, who has never made any mistakes, that is the biggest mistake. Fourth update: I've made up for what I owed yesterday. The cold wind is howling outside the flower window and the snow is flying. I hope you all can watch dramas and enjoy hot pot in a warm home. It's peaceful and happy." Pen refill. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 854. Chapter 854: A Belated Birthday Gift. Obviously, Mr. Ho and Jiaran also thought of this. They looked at each other and reached a consensus instantly. This Gilai, even if he has no ill intentions towards Broken Gold Beach, still needs to find out his identity and purpose. Because he is too close to Jiyan and lives in the village, if he finds out that Jiyan is different, it will definitely not be a good thing. Rather than bet that someone is thinking about old feelings, keeping secret, and helping to keep it secret. It would be better if he had no chance of discovering the secret at all. Don't worry about this matter, I will send someone to investigate, the Marquis told the two brothers and sisters, and said, Jiyan should be more careful when he is with Gilai in the future. As he spoke, he called Yeshan loudly and told him to come to Muju. As a result, before Yeshan could leave, Muju floated down from the roof. Perhaps he was a little embarrassed to be seen by everyone, so he raised his eyebrows and smiled, I didn't eavesdrop on your conversation, I just like to look at the moon. Jiaran frowned, obviously not believing this excuse. The Marquis didn't care, and motioned for the good news to come forward, then pointed at Muju and said, do you remember that one year on your birthday, your adoptive father said that your gift was still outside? This boy is your birthday gift. Give a living person a gift. Hearing the good news, he was baffled, and Jiaran was about to object immediately. House Ho waved his hand and explained a few more words to Tong Jiyan. Even though this kid looks like he's smiling, he's actually a ruthless, stubborn person and a genius in martial arts. Let him be your personal guard from now on. As long as you want to do something, it has nothing to do with ethics. As long as you tell him, he will do it. Jiyan subconsciously looked at Muju a few more times. Today he is wearing black clothes, his face is sharp and angular, his eyes are not big but very bright, sometimes there is a bit of cruelty in the corner of his mouth, but when it is raised, it changes to cynical ridicule. 70% handsome, 30% scoundrel. If this was placed in the entertainment industry of the previous life, it would be a huge hit and make countless girls scream. It's a pity that this is Tianwu, and he is also a personal guard given to her by her adoptive father. The word personal sounds ambiguous, but just like personal nanny, it means that one can be completely trusted. Jiaran originally wanted to object, but thinking that Gu Li was now responsible for the repair of the new shop, his sister would definitely have to go there often, and the multiple guards around her would provide multiple safety guarantees, so he swallowed his words. But he stopped talking, and Muju smiled and said, Master Marquis, we originally agreed on 5 years. In other words, within these 5 years, I will be completely loyal to the princess and obey all her orders. But after 5 years, I must be free. The Marquis nodded, don't worry, I won't regret it. I have settled your deep hatred for you long ago, and now it's your turn to fulfill your promise. He patted Jiyan's shoulder lightly and said seriously, this girl is my lord's Nixon, and I will leave it to you to protect her from now on. Muju was silent for a moment, then knelt down on one knee and saluted Jiyan. In the next 5 years, if anyone wants to hurt the princess, they will definitely bleed my blood first. If anyone wants to kill the princess, they will definitely step on my body first. Jiyan glanced at the Marquis, who nodded slightly. Jiyan then stepped forward to help Muju up and said, Brother Mu, we will have a good time getting along with you in the next 5 years. She spoke and stretched out her right hand. A flash of doubt flashed in Muju's eyes, but he still stretched out his hand to hold it. The girl's hands were very tender and soft, slightly cold, just like in his memory, the ice cream served to him by his mother one summer day, which made him subconsciously want to take a bite. Happy cooperation, Jiyan saw that Muju was a little stunned, so she smiled and shook his hand up and down, and then took it back. Jiaran looked at Muju and felt inexplicably annoyed. He calmly took his sister and said to the Marquis, Master Marquis, it's getting late. I'm taking Fu Niur back. Okay, Mr. Ho nodded and said, Fu Niur, remember to bring the medicine early tomorrow. I'm going to rush to the military camp at the dock. I understand, adoptive father. The good news was accepted, and he let his eldest brother do it honestly. Put on a cloak for her, and then walked away with her eldest brother in her arms. After leaving the gate of the home mansion, Jiren couldn't bear it anymore. Funiur, as the old saying goes, you know the face but not the heart. Although the Marquis cannot harm you or let people with malicious intentions around you, there is still a chance that the Marquis may make mistakes, so you still have to be more careful. If you notice something is wrong with someone, tell me immediately, you know. I know, brother. Jiyan lowered his head and rubbed his shoulder, and whispered, brother, don't worry. Jiren sighed, suddenly feeling nostalgic for his childhood. At that time, my sister was chubby and very cute, and her brothers would carry her wherever she went. Now that my sister has grown up and faces more dangers, I can no longer keep her around me all the time. At night, Jiyan was thinking about preparing medicine for wounds, and was busy in the space for a while. He had already slept a little after getting up early. In her daze, she seemed to hear crying, and sat up suddenly when she was startled. Shui Ling and Shui Yun were waiting outside the door. When they heard the noise, they quickly walked in. What happened? Jiyan asked with a frown. Shui Ling responded in a low voice, Miss, this morning the Pier camp sent the urns of the ashes of the soldiers who died in the battle. There are 2 families in the second village without men. Sue doesn't want to believe that the elderly and children of the 2 families are crying in front of the marquee door. Died in battle. Jiyan sighed inwardly. Yesterday's reunion was very lively. Everyone actually wanted to ask, but no one asked to spoil the scenery. The battlefield is dangerous, and there are more than 1,000 wounded soldiers in the military camp at the dock. How is it possible that no one died in the battle? It's just that no one wants to hear such sad news, even if it's a day late. Jiyan quickly put on her coat and skirt, washed herself and went to the front yard. The yard was a bit empty, apparently everyone in the family had gone to the next door. In front of the Ye family's courtyard, 2 women brought 4 or 5 children, and an old lady with grey hair was crying sadly. The village chief, Uncle Zhao, Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying, and dozens of villagers gathered around. The village chief sighed and began to persuade, daughter-in-law of the Zhao family, daughter-in-law of the Qi family, stop crying and get up quickly. The ground is cold, so don't freeze the children. When men go off to war, no one can guarantee that they will come back intact. It's really hard to get through, but you still have to grit your teeth and get on with your life. There are so many villagers in Zincan number 2 village, no one can watch you, old and young, without a place to live. Uncle Zhao and others also followed up and said, yes, you also have work in the workshop. The children will grow up in 2 years. Learn how to support the family, and the family will be able to support itself again. The villagers also looked sad and opened their mouths to comfort him. For the sake of the children, you have to cheer up. Just grit your teeth and endure it for a few years, it will be fine when the child grows up. You guys are like this, and the father won't feel at ease even if he moves around. It's a pity that no matter how hard everyone tried to persuade them, the 2 families still knelt and refused to get up. Some smart people have frowned, and Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying also sighed. Needless to say, these 2 families want to use this matter to gain some practical benefits. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 855. Chapter 855, People who understand do not speak secretly. Jiyan stood outside the crowd and guessed most of it. Now she walked in and took her grandma's arm. Tao Hongying turned around to meet her, raised her hand to tidy up her daughter's hair on the temples, and turned sideways to block the cold wind. Jiyan didn't say anything. If it was a matter in the village, she would naturally handle it. But these people are military dependents of Erkin, and they still need their adoptive father to come forward. Soon, the Marquis walked out of the courtyard wearing a dark cloak. His eyes swept across the old and frail women and children kneeling in front of the door, then turned to old Mrs. Lee and said, "Auntie, I'm causing trouble for you." "What kind of trouble is this?" Old Mrs. Lee shook her head, remembering her own belief in being a widow with her children many years ago, so she persuaded in a low voice, "Without a man, it will definitely be difficult for them to live in the future. If you can help them more, you should help them more bar." The Marquis nodded and then said to the two families, "Zhao Titu and Chidalu died in battle. It is an honor to die for the country. 3 days later, the 10 taels of pension provided by the court will be paid out, and I will add another 10 taels. In addition, the children of your two families will be given 20 kilograms of grain and 500 cash per month by the Marquis mansion." This prince raised them on behalf of their father until they were 15 years old. Everyone was happy for the two families. They had 20 taels of silver to support their family, lived in a house in the village, had errands in the workshop, and their children had food and money every month. They would definitely be able to live well in the future. That's great. Yes, the Marquis is very righteous. The two families were of course even more happy and cried more and more. The old woman and the old man took the children by their knees and walked forward, kowtowing to the Marquis. The village chief was worried about delaying Mr. Ho from going out to do business, so he quickly called the villagers to send the two families back to the second village. After all, there are still two families whose ashes of men have not been laid to rest. No matter how simple the funeral is, preparations must be made. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Chidalu's daughter-in-law suddenly asked, "Master Ho, if I take the child back to my parents' home, the child's money and food will not be cut off, right?" As soon as the words fell, the front door of the courtyard immediately became quiet. The village chief, Uncle Zhao, and others all looked bad, and they were getting better with age. Others did not hear the hidden meaning of the words, but they knew it clearly. This woman is not going back to her natal family, but to prepare for remarriage. The body of the man who died in the battle is still cold. How could she have such a plan? Mrs. Lee also guessed it. She was afraid that Mr. Ho would not understand, so she immediately took over the conversation. "Daughter-in-law of Dalu, if you want to go back to your parents' home, you can go back by yourself, but the child must stay in the village to study and grow up. Besides, if they leave with you, who can go all the way to send them money and food? Old madam, don't we have a caravan in our village? The eldest master also has a fleet." Chidalu's wife was a little anxious, but when she saw old Mrs. Lee's face darkening mid-sentence, she swallowed her words. Orange Mrs. Lee glanced at the two children of the chief family. A boy was 8 or 9 years old, and a girl was 5 or 6 years old. They were both at an ignorant age. "Suddenly I lost my father and had such an unreliable mother." She directly exposed Dalu's daughter-in-law's thoughts and said coldly, "Dalu's daughter-in-law, people don't speak secretly. You are still young and plan to return to your natal family. You must want to remarry. But if you bring two children with you, no matter who else you go to, both children will be disliked. Perhaps by then, the money their own father exchanged with his life will be cheaper than outsiders, and they will have to support outsiders with monthly food and supplies instead. They will have to starve, freeze, and even be beaten, scolded, and humiliated." Dalu's wife's face turned red with embarrassment. She quickly looked at the Marquis and wanted to make a few excuses. Old Mrs. Lee waved her hand. "You don't have to look at Mr. Ho, I have made the decision on this matter. If you want to remarry, no one will stop you. If you want to leave, you can leave at any time. But the two children can't go with you. They have enough money and food to survive when they grow up. As for, if they still want to find you after they grow up, we won't stop them." At this moment, everyone in the village also understood. Originally, They sympathized with Dalu's wife for losing a man, but they immediately despised her. This is so cruel. The man is thinking of remarrying before he is buried. Even if you want to remarry, it's okay, but you have to think more about your children. Forget it, they are planning to take away the man's life money, and they are still thinking about the children's money and food. Chidalu's wife shrank her neck and waved her hands desperately, saying that it was all a misunderstanding. But who among the people is willing to listen? The Marquis looked equally unhappy. He asked the two children of the Xiangqi family, if your mother remarries, will you go with her or stay in Sujintan? The boy from the Qi family took his sister's hand, wiped his tears, and said loudly, Master Marquis, when my father went to war, he told me to study hard and learn my skills in the future. I also asked my sister to grow up and marry in Sujintan, saying that life here is easy and the people here are nice. My sister and I will live here if we don't leave. When I grow up, I will definitely repay the favor to the Marquis. What a boy! Before the Marquis could speak again, the villagers had already cheered and praised him one after another. Yes, no one will bully you here. You can grow up with food and water, and you are not afraid of others bullying you. That is, if you follow your mother and marry into someone else's family, you are handing over your life to someone else. The Marquis nodded, as long as you don't want to leave, no one can take you away. The Qi family boy and his sister knelt down and kowtowed. Chidalu's wife glared at them fiercely, but she also lowered her head and did not dare to speak. When Jiyan saw this, he said, Father, the medicine is ready. You can leave as soon as possible. Don't worry about home. Mrs. Li also said, yes, it's all small things at home, and everyone helps. The Marquis then got on his horse, took his soldiers and rushed to the military camp at the wharf. There are still more than 1,000 wounded soldiers waiting for treatment with special medicine powder, and there are even more ashes of soldiers who died in the battle that have not been placed. Seeing that the Marquis had gone away, Zhao and Qi's family also returned to the second village. Mrs. Li then discussed with the village chief and others, pay more attention to this daughter-in-law of the Qi family recently. I'm afraid she has already thought about her future family, otherwise she wouldn't be in such a hurry. Be careful that she takes away the money and harms 2 more children. The village chief nodded and sighed, these 2 children of the Qi family are pitiful. Jiyan was afraid that the old man would become anxious, so he said, Grandma, village chief, please don't worry. Let me tell you, the 2 children are actually blessed. If they hadn't come over in their hometown, they would have been left to their mother's calculations. Everyone thought that this was also the case and dispersed after chatting for a few words. Soon, the memorial sheds of the Qi family and the Zhao family were set up, and spiritual flags were placed in front of the doors. All the veterans and military family members in the second village are concerned about the situation and try to help as much as possible. Even though they heard that Chidalu's wife was not honest, they did not say a word in front of Chidalu's funeral. Chidalu's daughter-in-law didn't know that she had a guilty conscience, but she still felt that she had been bullied and felt aggrieved. In short, she was crying heartbreakingly. For those who don't know, she thought they had a good relationship as a couple. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 856. Chapter 856 Reincarnation is a technical job. Here in Zincan, every family sent something as a token of their gratitude. Old Mrs. Li also brought Grandma Chang and selected a basket of things herself. Kijia is 2 pieces of plain material suitable for children to make coats and trousers, plus 2 taels of silver. The Zhao family directly gave him 5 taels of silver. Tao Hongying wanted to exchange all the materials and money of the Qi family for food. Even if Kitalu's daughter-in-law wanted to leave, she couldn't take all the food with her, so she could only leave it behind for her two children. But Mrs. Lee still held on to a glimmer of hope and saved face for Kitalu's wife. Unfortunately, we got up early the next day to mourn. Kitalu's ashes jar was buried in the soil and piled into a small bag. The two children cried half to death. Everyone in the new village and the second village comforted them and carried them home. When they were carried home, the Chi family's yard was already empty. Kitalu's daughter-in-law took advantage of the chaos just now, and most of the people in the village were at the cemetery to sneak back and took away all the valuables in the house, including the pension money and the two new pieces of cloth. The women in the second village were absolutely furious. Kitalu's wife seems to be quite nice on weekdays. Who would have thought that she would be so evil-hearted? This bitch, isn't she afraid of thunder? My biological child, throw it away as soon as I say it. She was escorted into the sedan chair by Dalu with a knife, so she was in such a hurry to leave the Chi family, after burning Kikai on Dalu before leaving. Even if she got married immediately, no one can say she was wrong. She ran in such a hurry because she was afraid that we would leave her as a widow. Everyone wanted to drown Kitalu's wife with just a mouthful of saliva. After all, it was Xiaoqui who looked at the two children of the Chi family, dumbfounded, neither crying nor speaking. She quickly called out to the women, and then carefully comforted the two children. "Good boy, don't be afraid. The Marquis has already said that he will give you money and food every month from now on, and no one will notice if anything happens. You can live the same life without your mother." The other women reacted and hurried forward to help. "Yes, if you don't know how to cook, just bring the food to my aunt's house, and my aunt will bring you meals every day. I'll wash your clothes for you. If you don't dare to live at home, come to my house and live with Urgozi and the others." The boy from the Chi family gritted his teeth and his lips turned pale, but he never let go of his sister's hand. He worked hard for a long time before saying, "Thank you, aunts, I can support my sister." Everyone felt even sadder after hearing this, but there was nothing they could do to persuade him. So everyone helped clean up the yard, cooked a meal for the two children, and then dispersed. When the news reached Zincan, everyone was angry and cursed. Tao Hongying took Nanny Lin to visit Kijia. When she came back, she called Xiaoqing and rushed 2 sets of new coats and trousers, and steamed 2 pots of steamed buns. The coats and trousers that the Chi family's 2 children had before were too thin. With the new coats and trousers, even if their hearts are cold, at least their bodies will not be cold. 2 pots of steamed buns cost more than 40 yuan. As long as the Chi family boys stewed anything, it would be enough for their brothers and sisters to eat for 4 or 5 days. As for the future, children of poor people are expected to take charge of their own business early, and children without a father or mother must become parents quickly. After all, everyone can only help for a while, no one can help them for the rest of their lives. Hapling the good news from beginning to end, I couldn't help but sigh. Reincarnation is really a technical job. Thanks to the gods and Buddhas for allowing her to be born into the Li family. If you are unlucky and end up with a woman like Kitalu's wife, you will be really miserable. Thinking this way, she became more and more grateful, so she quickly got busy. One moment I would rub my mother's shoulders, and the next I would cook and serve wine and food for my father. Li Laozi just paid it off. He just came back from the expedition. How happy he was because his daughter was so filial. Tao Hongying was careless. She got tired of being pestered by her daughter like a follower for a long time, so she went directly to Liu's house to talk to Liu Yang. She planned to make some pairs of shoes for Ji, but the boy hadn't come back for more than 2 years, and no one in the family knew his shoe size. She could only ask Liu Yang. At the end of the day, it is Mrs. Li who knows her granddaughter well. She keeps smiling as she watches her granddaughter bustling in and out. Let's not talk about this small incident at home, just say that this day is a big court meeting. There are more than 100 Beijing officials above the fifth rank, all crowded into the main hall, and it is also crowded. But I don't know if it was because the Northern Expeditionary Army returned and Xintinghao was in charge of the new capital, so the court was rarely quiet. The little censor who used to bite people like a mad dog and hoped to make a name for himself by stepping on his colleagues has disappeared. Because of trivial matters, officials who blamed each other also shut up. The emperor sat down on the dragon chair and felt a little uncomfortable. When he thought about it, he laughed sarcastically and said, "My dears, why are you so quiet today? Is it possible that I, Tian Wuyan Heking, don't have any troubles at all?" The courtiers all shrank their necks, smiled dryly and said nothing. Of course, there are officials who are good at flattering, who thought this was a good opportunity to stand out, so they stepped forward and said loudly, "Your Majesty, the Northern Expedition returned victorious, but I heard that there were also 7 or 8,000 casualties. I am worried that the Emperor will be sad about this, so I don't want to take any trivial matters to add to the Emperor's sorrow." When others heard this, they immediately followed. "Yes, Your Majesty, I feel as sad as Your Majesty. Your Majesty, please take care of your dragon body." If the Emperor were not so concerned about his status as an emperor, he would really like to give these people a big look. If words and words were effective, he would have thrown these people to the north of the Yangtze River to kill the barbarians. It's a pity that they are good at flattering, and when they see the barbarians, they will immediately urinate in fear. At this moment, Ye Wen suddenly came out, interrupting everyone's flattery frenzy. "Your Majesty, I have this report. Lu Zhong, a doctor in the Ministry of Official Affairs, allowed his tribe to rob water sources last spring and beat 3 villagers from a neighboring village to death. Lu Zhong took advantage of his power to conceal the matter and falsely accused the villagers of blackmail. The villagers were forced to leave, and their families were destroyed. Lu Zhong is just a member of the army of flatterers." He was still thinking about where he failed to take the right shot, when suddenly a big iron pot banged on his head, and he didn't even have time to react. In the end, the person next to him couldn't see it and gave him a push. He fell to his knees directly and shouted loudly, "Your Majesty, I am wronged." Before the emperor could speak, Zhongshan Boli Laoer also stood up and said, "Your Majesty, I am suing Sun Baiquan from the Ministry of Works on behalf of Gao Jianzhong, an old man from the Relief Department. When Sun Baiquan was in charge of repairing the river 3 years ago, he embezzled a huge amount of silver and withheld the rations of the people who were doing the corvée work. So much so that hundreds of people died of starvation and exhaustion, the back embankments were washed away by heavy rains, dozens of villages and towns were crushed, and thousands of people were displaced. 2 of the 3 sons of the old man Gao Jianzhong died at the construction site, and another died on the way to escape. He is the only one left alive to this day, just to bring this matter to heaven and eliminate harm for the people." As soon as he finished speaking, another censor stood up. "Your Majesty, I am suing Wang Wei, the deputy commander of the City Defense and Inspection Department, for allowing his subordinates to bully merchants, extort money, and take civilian girls as concubines." Just like that, Ye Wen took the lead, and 6 people came forward one after another, all of whom complained. The 6 accused courtiers did not dare to neglect, and they all knelt down to defend themselves. For a moment, the deserted court hall just now seemed to be bursting with chestnuts, which were suddenly placed on the fire and crackled and exploded. The third update is here. It's the end of the month, dear friends. If you have must-read tickets, give Wawa a few. Being in isolation, Wawa is going crazy. She codes every day, and has to battle wits with my gold-eating beast. She hugs her legs and begs for some good looks or 5-star reviews, refills, crazy refills. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 857. Chapter 857, It's useless to complain, but what about Dolly Temple? Some of the courtiers watched the excitement, some were surprised, some were afraid of being affected, but most of them were confused. Wen Yushi is half of the Li family. He should go out to present the memorial first, followed by Li Laoer. There is no need to guess. These defendants must have provoked the Li family. But no one knows what caused the Li family to be offended. And with such a large-scale counterattack, the Li family must be furious. But there were also understanding people in the crowd, namely the 6 officials who knelt down to defend themselves. What they did to the Li family, I know best. Because of the case of Li Jiyi hurting someone in the street, they filed a memorial and wanted to punish Li Jiyi as soon as possible. Even if he cannot be beheaded, he will still be sentenced to 20 years of hard labor. This is definitely a heavy blow to the Li family. As a result, when their memorials were handed over, it was like a stone sinking into the sea, and the emperor did not respond at all. No, the emperor responded, otherwise the Li family would not have found them so accurately. The emperor must have given the memorial to the Li family. The entire period of silence of the Li family was used to collect evidence and details about their crimes. The more they thought about it, the more panicked they became, and the louder they shouted their grievances. On the other hand, Yushi Wen and others lowered their heads and waited quietly after delivering the memorial, and did not participate in any quarrel or argument. Let's make a decision. The rest of the officials shut up and stopped talking, leaving only a few defendants like clowns. The emperor glanced at Manager Yi, who immediately shouted, "Quiet." The few who complained finally discovered that they were at a disadvantage, but it was too late. The emperor directly said, "It's useless to complain, so why should Dali Temple do it?" The officials involved in the case escorted Dali Temple and ordered Dali Temple to investigate in detail and report it at any time. The minister of Dali Temple hurriedly came out to respond, but his heart felt as if he had eaten Coptis chinensis, and he was extremely bitter. This case may seem ordinary, but behind it is the struggle between the Li family and the 6 people. The gods are fighting, and he, the mortal caught in the middle, is involved again. But before he could think more, the emperor asked again, "How is the investigation of the Wu family's case in Jiangning Marquis Mansion? Is the Wu family really seizing people's fields and robbing people's daughters?" The minister of Dali Temple trembled when he heard this and knelt down. Of course the investigation found it out. After all, the witnesses and material evidence were sufficient. Since the Wu family has the emperor as their son-in-law, they originally didn't think about how to hide it. But the emperor has been silent. There is also a queen in the palace who is fighting for her mother's family. Even if he has 10,000 courage, he does not dare to take the initiative to report it. He quickly analyzed the emperor's tone again and made sure that there was no regret or soft-heartedness, so he quickly explained the case clearly. The emperor snorted coldly and said, "The Wu family has failed the emperor and oppressed the people. The evidence is conclusive. The whole family will be beheaded if they are over 10 years old, and sold into slavery if they are under 10 years old. Next year." He hesitated for a moment, and then said, "We will be asked to cut it in the autumn of next year." The courtiers were a little surprised when they heard this. After all, the queen was still in the harem, and the emperor had no intention of abolishing the queen. They thought that the outcome of the Wu family would at most be to be driven back to their ancestral home to farm. How did you think that the emperor really wanted to kill the Wu family? I'm afraid what the Wu family committed is not as simple as it seems. But no matter how hard they tried, no one dared to ask the emperor. Soon, the emperor waved his sleeves and dismissed the court. When the courtiers saw the 6 unlucky men being escorted away by the guards, they all had mixed emotions and talked as they walked. Is this Li family crazy? Why did they sue so many people at once? Who knows how they got into trouble with the Li family? The Li family usually doesn't show off easily. Don't worry about the reasons for now, let's take a look at the power of the Li family. It's only been a few years, and the Li family has already recruited so many helpers. Today, it's a six-pronged attack. Oh, yes, yes, I'm also surprised by this. The Li family has become so powerful despite not saying anything. Wen Yushi, Li Laoer and others walked in front, completely ignoring the comments behind them. Those people who dared to add insult to injury to the Li family should have expected what they would end up with today. After all, the Li family attaches great importance to reciprocity. Wen Yushi rubbed his sore eyes and said with a smile, "I can sleep well tonight. I stayed up for half the night last night and went to court again this morning. I can actually fall asleep standing up." "Me too," Li Laoer yawned. "I'll go back to Sujintan early in the afternoon. Lao Si and Daong are both there. Let's have a few drinks and have a good sleep." At this time, in order to investigate these six people, the two of them and Li Zhensheng spent a lot of effort. Fortunately, today I overturned 6 idiots at once. All the efforts and hard work have paid off. Mr. Wen waved his hand and said, "Wait a few more days until Haelanjun arrives in Kyoto and takes Ji back. It won't be too late for us to drink again." These words reminded Li Laoer. He looked at the sky and said quickly, "I'll go ahead and tell you something at home tonight." With that said, he left in a hurry. Mr. Wen shook his head enviously. He was not as free as Li Laoer and could leave whenever he wanted. He has to go back to the yamen to work, but he can sneak out to buy some gadgets at noon. The baby girl at home has lost her temper because he has been too busy recently and rarely plays with her. She has already lost her temper and refuses to be held by him. During the day, Zindu was very lively because 6 more officials fell down in the court, and everyone was talking about it. But when night falls, everything reluctantly returns to calm. In Jingzayin's prison, 4 jailers were sitting together drinking tea and chatting. One of them said, "Our leader is really old. He only drank a few bowls of mutton soup at night, and he's actually got a bad stomach." "Haha," another prisoner couldn't help laughing and whispered, "Don't mention it, our leader's feet are weak when he walks, and he almost hit his head when he went out. If he doesn't drink the soup or medicine when he goes back, he may not be able to survive it. It's a pity about those mutton soups. Cyclamen's craftsmanship is very good. The soup is milky white in color, and the haggis and mutton don't have any fishy smell. Add a few thousand-layer sesame seed cakes, and it's a perfect match." The skinny jailer who spoke first had a salivating look on his face, as if he was still thinking about it. The others laughed and gloated about the misfortune, and asked the skinny jailer, "You went back to your hometown a few days ago and didn't come to work, but you suffered a loss. We have been eating Cyclamen's good food for several days, and every meal is delicious. The pork in the pot is crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. The sweet and sour fish is sour and sweet, and the most fragrant thing is the braised pork. Pour a spoon on the white rice, and you won't exchange it for a gold ingot. Oh, look at my waist, it's become a whole lot bigger." The skinny jailer made a gesture to pinch his waist, but the two of them couldn't help but laugh. After chatting like this for a long time, when it was time to patrol, the 2 jailers casually walked around the cell. When he came back, a jailer said to the skinny jailer, "Fugui-san, you just came back today, why don't you ask more questions? Why did you throw that thief into General Li's room?" The skinny jailer, the rich man, quickly said with fear, "I just saw that the room was empty, so I threw the person in. It's just for one night. It should be okay, right?" End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 858. Chapter 858, When someone steals money, he steals life. The jailers turned around and looked at the door. One of them said, "It doesn't matter if you have anything to do. Let the chief take the keychain. Let's wait until tomorrow morning. We will bring it up tomorrow morning." Hearing this, Fuguier immediately became energetic again. He took out a dice and invited everyone to bet on 2. This play lasted until midnight. Everyone was so sleepy that they finally fell asleep lying on the table. In the inner cell, the driest area was covered with a straw mat, with linoleum on the mat to keep out moisture, and finally a thick quilt. Ji Yi and Lao Huang lay side by side, covered with quilts, snoring sweetly. In the corner opposite them sat a thin man with a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks, looking like a thief. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but fall asleep, and his eyes were still chattering. Su was sure it was safe, and he stood up cautiously. An oil lamp was lit on the far wall, illuminating a little dim light. He used the light to look at the sleeping Jia Yi and Lao Huang, and subconsciously held his breath. Then, he took out a small porcelain bottle from his messy hair and sprinkled some powder near Ji Yi and Lao Huang. After waiting for a while, he kicked their feet tentatively. When there was no response, he bent down and pulled out a knife from the sole of his shoe, and cut Ji Yi's neck while holding back the trembling. Unexpectedly, Lao Huang, who was supposed to be sleeping, suddenly widened his eyes and kicked him away. Tower hit the wall hard and screamed in pain, completely waking up everyone in the cell. Lao Huang rushed forward, crackling and opening it again, until Tour was half dead. He dug into Tour's mouth again, pulled out a fang, and finally gave it to Ji Yi along with the porcelain bottle and the dagger. Ji Yi had already sat up and watched the show when Lao Huang moved his feet. How could he not be somewhat defensive when he was in a dangerous situation? What's more, during the day, his father had already sent him a message. This thief has left so many empty prisons, but he just packed them into this one. Only a fool can't see that there is something fishy. At this moment, he took what Lao Huang handed over and said with a smile, "I'll add chicken drumsticks for you tomorrow." Lao Huang scratched his bald head, lay down with a smile, and almost immediately started snoring again. Several jailers in the distance were awakened. Only then did they dare to step forward and asked with a cautious smile, "General Li, what are you?" Ji Yi shook the things in his hands and sneered, "If I remember correctly, neither your Lord Yin nor the court should have sentenced me to death, right?" Then the thief, who was suddenly pushed in, used drug to stun me in the middle of the night, and held a dagger in his hand, intending to cut my neck. What happened? Medicine. Cut your neck. Several jailers felt their legs weak when they heard this, and their faces turned pale at that time. Especially the rich man who locked the little thief in, almost peed his pants. It took a long time for a jailer to regain his composure and waved his hands hurriedly, "No, no, General Li, it must be a misunderstanding. Even if you give us 100 courages, we won't dare to harm you. Just wait, we will report it right away, and we will definitely not let you encounter something like this again." After saying that, he quickly assigned tasks to several brothers. Some went to the prison boss's house to report the news, some went to the backyard of the government office to report the news, and some even went to the Earl's mansion. Since something happened to Ji Yi, Li Laoer and Li Zhensheng have taken turns to live in the Earl's mansion, fearing that outsiders would not be able to find them if something happened. Tonight, Li Laoer was worried about his son, so he sent his eldest brother home to see his mother, but he stayed. After receiving the news from Jing Zaiyin, he immediately went out and rushed over. Meeting the patrolling city defense soldiers on the road, Li Laoer directly reported the name of the Earl's mansion without hiding it, and explained the reason for going to Jingzhaoyin prison. The lieutenant blocking the road heard that Li Jiyi had been assassinated in prison. Without hesitation for a moment, he immediately got out of the way and even escorted the Li family's carriage directly to Jingzhaoyin prison. One of the soldiers was impatient and complained a few words. The captain heard this and whipped him around in circles. "You idiot, do you know who Li Jiyi is? That's how hard he was to kick Uncle Guo to death. Do you know why Jing Zaiyin delayed the sentence for so long? He was waiting for the Heian army. Li Jiyi was the hero in killing the Japanese pirates. When something happens to him, you still dare to stop the Li family. Is it because you think his head is too heavy on his shoulders and you want to chop it off? The captain scolded the soldier in a low voice, and the others quickly persuaded him, and then went on patrol again. Besides, Li Lauer came all the way into the cell, not to mention the prison boss who was making hot bed at home. Even the Fuyan master came. Seeing Li Lauer and everyone bowing awkwardly, Mr. Fuyan said, "Uncle, could you please make a trip in the evening?" Li Lauer had a dark face and snorted coldly, "My son is going to be killed, how can I not come? If something goes wrong, I, the father, should collect my son's body." "Uncle, what you said is serious, what you're saying is serious." Mr. Fuyan couldn't help wiping his sweat beads and kept cursing in his heart. He was sleeping soundly with his arms around his concubine. Suddenly, disaster came from the sky, causing him to rush here in a hurry. He also had to listen to people's ridicule. Where could he go to reason? The prison boss felt even more guilty. He had taken a lot of benefits from the Li family, and Prince Lu had given him many instructions, just to take good care of this little General Li. As a result, people were almost killed under his nose now, and he really couldn't explain it. "What's going on? Tell me quickly." Li Lauer glanced at his son in the prison and the half-dead thief, and said impatiently, "I want to hear it. The emperor didn't even give the order. Who dares? Trying to harm my son?" The governor looked at the cell leader, who looked embarrassed, and then looked at the jailers on duty at night. A jailer couldn't escape, so he stood up and told the story, not forgetting to remove himself at the end. "That, sir, you really don't blame us. It was Fugui who locked that thief into General Li's room. The boss is not here, we don't have the key, and we can't move the thief to another room. We just want to deal with it all night and take him out in the morning, but something happens when we don't think about it." The prison boss is not stupid, and he took over the conversation with the roll of his eyes. "Oh, I was fine when I had dinner, but I just drank a cup of tea handed to me by the rich man and I felt bad. And this thief was also sent in by wealth." Everyone subconsciously looked at Fugui, with determination on their faces. Everything tonight was all the work of this boy. Fugui's face was as white as paper, his legs went weak and he fell to the ground. I'm wronged." He was so frightened that he seemed to have lost half his life, and he could not even speak clearly. Mr. Fuyan breathed a sigh of relief and immediately ordered, "Tie him up and interrogate him immediately." Several jailers immediately pulled the rope and quickly tied Fugui into a pig-like shape. "Although we drink and gamble together on weekdays, we get along well. But at this time, no one can miss the old feelings." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 859. Chapter 859. Reinforcements are coming. Moreover, when the rich and powerful were tampering with people behind their backs, they didn't take them into consideration. Don't look at the Li family being polite to them, giving them both food and money. That is because I want them to help take care of Li Jiyi. If something happens to Li Jiyi, they will be the first to be hated by the Li family. Soon, the rich man was hanged up. In front of Fuyan and Li Lauer, the prison boss tried his best to make Fugui life and death, and finally made the explanation clear. One of his distant cousins gave him 50 taels of silver and asked him to put the thief into Li Jiyi's cell. He thought it would not be difficult, and his cousin said that someone just wanted to teach Li Jiyi a lesson and nothing big would happen. He was greedy for money, so he agreed. He also didn't expect that the other party was not trustworthy and actually wanted Li Jiyi's life. The thief was then hanged up, and the treatment that the rich man had enjoyed was repeated. Tour was crying like a ghost and howling like a wolf. He was pouring beans into the bamboo tube, and he confessed that there was nothing left. His wife and son were both seriously ill. When they went out to steal things, they were caught again. He accepted the murderous job after being coerced and lured. Whether things work out or not, his mother and son will be treated by someone, and food and accommodation will be properly arranged. He even went to see it. My mother and son lived in a small courtyard in the north of the city, and were served by 2 old slaves. The doctor also came to write a prescription for medicine. He smelled the medicine for half an afternoon before being taken to the cell. Of course, the other party has conditions, that is, after killing Li Jiyi, he cannot live. But even ants want to survive, let alone humans. When he was kicked against the wall by Lao Huang, he should have broken his fangs, but in the end he took a chance and thought he could escape with his life. In the end, I found out that something was wrong and wanted to commit suicide. The fangs were dug out by Lao Huang again. The governor was also very clever. He asked about the location of the courtyard in the north of the city and the name of his wealthy distant cousin, so he immediately sent someone to arrest him. Less than half an hour, the news was sent back. The rich man's distant cousin was killed, and even the wife and son who stole the son were also dead, and the so-called old servant also disappeared. Fuguier and Tower both fainted at that time. It's just that the former is frightened, while the latter is distressed and regretful. Li Lao originally didn't expect Jing Ziyin to catch the mastermind behind the scenes. The reason why he made such a big fuss was that he wanted to let the entire court and even Zindu know about it. In this way, many people will feel that the Li family sued 6 people at once in the court, not because they were aggressive, but because they had no choice but to do so. Li Jiyi has people in the government office who dare to scheme. The huge broken gold beach has suffered countless dangers. Although the governor is not worried about the Li family's anger on him, he is not happy about the people behind the plot plotting against the Li family and involving him. So, he promised to enter the palace after dawn and report the matter to the emperor, and he would catch the daring person behind him no matter what. Li Lao softened his expression, thanked him, and told Jiyi, be more alert. Don't think that this is a prison. Not even a fly can fly in, so you can rest assured. Even copper and iron walls can't stop someone from eating in and out. All the jailers looked down with their faces red, their face completely lost. Li Lao came out of the government prison and asked Zheng He, counting the days, should the Highland army arrive. Don't worry, uncle, I will be there tomorrow morning, Zheng He responded. Li Lao nodded, let's go back to the Earl's mansion. There is still a tough battle to be fought tomorrow. Once we get this Jiyi out of prison, we will be relieved. The carriage was on the road again, and in the night, the sound of horse hoof beats could be heard. Especially clear. The winter river wind blows on the face like a knife, and the pain makes people want to shrink their necks. But 20 miles south of Zindaway Pier, there was a group of large ships riding the wind and waves. There was a circle of soldiers standing on the side of the ship, each with a helmet on his head and a spear in his hand, with his head held high and his chest high, looking majestic. An old general stood at the bow of the ship. He was the sea-fixing needle of the Hailan army, General Tang. This time they went to Beijing to present prisoners, which was originally a great achievement and a happy event. But the news he received earlier made him anxious all the way, and he wanted to travel day and night. Zindapur is always busy and crowded. However, the Hailan army's fleet was about to dock, and all merchant ships voluntarily gave up their positions. Liu Yang climbed up the side of the ship with his bare hands before the first ship had stopped or even set up the gangplank. As soon as he saw General Tang, he knelt down on one knee and said loudly, "General, you are here." General Tang Lao General helped Liu Yang up and saw that he had lost a lot of weight and his eyes were black and blue. It was obvious that he was suffering from weight loss these days, so he urged, "Hurry up and talk about the matter so that I can enter the palace." Liu Yang did not dare to hesitate and explained everything clearly in detail. General Tang's face grew darker and darker as he listened, and finally he cursed, "What nonsense, Did Li Jiyi's brain get eaten by a dog? Is it easy to accumulate that little military merit after killing Japanese pirates for 3 years? He said he didn't want it, so he didn't want it. I thought he had made some progress, but I didn't expect him to still look like the dumb young man he was when he first came to Hailan Army. Liu Yang smiled bitterly, prompting General Tang to scold him again. Aren't you and Li Jiyi a brother who wore the same pants and grew up together? If he wants to do something stupid, don't stop him. Liu Yang was wronged. He had been scolded by his parents dozens of times. General, I can't persuade Jiyi's temper and strength at all. Besides, 4th Uncle Li and Lord Marquis have returned with the Northern Expeditionary Army. 4th Uncle Li has made great achievements, and the Imperial Court's reward will be issued soon. General Tang heard the implication and couldn't help but sigh. Jiyi, this boy is really worthy of his name. He waved his hand. No need to say anything more, it's already like this, let's just solve it. Come on, follow me into the city and try to get that boy Jiyi out. You can't keep him in jail at all, it's really too humiliating. It's better to let him return to Quanzhou quickly and kill the Japanese pirates. Liu Yang nodded quickly, remembering the danger last night, and told General Tang again as he walked. When General Tang heard this, he thought it was a good idea. How could this be possible when his most beloved general was not killed by the Japanese pirates but was almost tricked and died in prison? At that time, he quickly rushed to the palace. In Broken Gold Beach, the news that Jiyi was almost killed in prison last night has not yet reached the Li family. But as soon as Mrs. Li got up in the morning, something was definitely wrong. Her eyelid on the right side was always twitching. She was upset when she picked up her sewing basket, and when she put the basket down and went out for a walk, she felt annoyed by the cold wind. She frowned and never let go. It just so happened that Mrs. Liu's mother celebrated her birthday today, and Tao Hongying, Zhao Yuru and Mrs. Wen all went to the city. Bai Yunjian helped bake a 5-layered cake. The cook at home had sent it over yesterday and was in charge of organizing the banquet today. Wanner was careful and held her son in her arms and coaxed the old lady for a while. But she was still worried, so she asked someone to go out and find her sister-in-law quickly. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 860. Chapter 860. The old saying never lies. Jiyan stayed at the pharmaceutical workshop for a while yesterday afternoon and stayed at the princess's mansion nearby in the evening. She got up early and was a little lazy. Before she returned to her old house, she thought of her sister-in-law and asked someone to find her. She thought for a while, then changed into a beautiful coat and skirt, added a cloak, and then took Shuiling and Shui Yun to find her grandma. As soon as she entered the yard, she shouted with a smile, "Grandma, let's go, I'll take you shopping, let's go spend some money." Mrs. Li was sitting in the room when she suddenly heard her granddaughter yelling. She thought something was wrong. When she heard what she heard, she couldn't help laughing and scolding, "You girl, you are making so much noise so early in the morning." Seeing that Grandma changed her smile and no longer frowned, Wanner breathed a sigh of relief and persuaded her, "Grandma, my sister is young." Before, because of that incident, she was kept at home and dared not go out. Now that the weather has calmed down, you might as well take her out for a walk. The Chinese New Year is just around the corner. Please help me choose 2 pieces of fresh fabrics. Wenjuan and I have also prepared new clothes for my sister to wear during the Chinese New Year. Wenjuan also quickly joined in, "Yes, Grandma, I want to make a pair of shoes for you, my mother, and my aunts, but it's hard for a clever woman to make a meal without rice, so I'm just waiting for Grandma to help me buy them." Just as good news came in from outside, when he heard this, he said, "It's not just me recently, my sisters-in-law haven't been out much either, so let's go into the city together. Second sister-in-law is going shopping with us. Sister-in-law can take Yuan and go back to her parents' house to see her. I'm afraid Aunt Sean has long missed you." How can a married woman miss her mother's family? Furthermore, although Mrs. She was very moved by her sister-in-law's arrangement, but she still looked at Mrs. Lee. Old Mrs. Lee is the most open-minded person, so why would she stop her grandson's daughter-in-law? So she immediately said, "Listen to Fu Niuer, let's go. Wenjuan is taking Xing Xing with us to go shopping. Fu Niuer is going to prepare some pears for your sister-in-law to take back and make rock sugar pear water for your Aunt Xing to drink, which will moisten the lungs and dryness." "Okay, Grandma, don't worry, our family is short of everything except fruit. I'll give Aunt Xing another basket of tangerines as a token of my filial piety." Jiyan agreed with a smile, and then asked Shui Ling to go back to the glass greenhouse of the princess's mansion to pick fruits. By the time the fruits were picked and brought back, the old and young had already changed into their coats, skirts and cloaks for going out. Mrs. Lee wore a fox fur warm hat, a flowing coat and skirt, and a maroon embroidered plum blossom cape trimmed with fox fur. Wenjuan is young, wearing a brocade jacket with peach blossoms all over the floor, a plain horse-faced skirt, and a smoke-colored begonia cloak. Wanner's return to her parents' home is naturally more grand. Wearing a bright red coat and skirt embroidered with peonies in gold and silver threads, and a hooded cloak with bamboo branches and lotus patterns. After all, she wanted her parents to feel at ease and know that she was doing well. Furthermore, she is the daughter-in-law of the Li family, and her clothes represent the face of the Li family. Seeing how beautiful her grandma and sisters-in-law were, Jiyan burst into laughter and happily surrounded them and walked out. Outside the courtyard gate, 2 carriages were ready. In the first car was Mrs. Lee, accompanied by Wenjuan, mother and son, and Jiyan. Grandma Chang and Shui Ling Shuiyun were waiting on her. A veteran drove the cart, Muju sat on the shaft, and 2 other veterans followed on horseback. In the car behind was Wan'er, her mother and her son, with their maid Chengxiu accompanying them. The same veteran drove the carriage, followed by a boy running errands, and 2 veterans escorted him on horseback. In the past, the people who drove the carriages at home were all young men, but since the incident with the Wu family, Li Laoer took the initiative and found 8 veterans in the second village. These veterans were all slightly injured with missing ears, injured eyes, or lameness. They were sent out without delay, and were then included in his personal guard quota. Veterans can ride horses and carry swords into the city. On weekdays, they are responsible for driving and protecting the Li family when they go out. But the Jiaran brothers are surrounded by young men who are skilled in martial arts. They also have crossbows and arrows for self-defense. They rarely bring veterans with them when they come and go. Therefore, these veterans don't have many opportunities to go out. They are happy to have the opportunity to follow them into the city today. The horsewhip was whipped up, and the horses' hooves clicked on the ice and snow road, especially briskly. Some veterans sang a tune learned from the north. Mrs. Lee heard it in the carriage and couldn't help but laugh. They say that moving trees dies and people move people alive. This is true. When our family fled from our hometown in the north, to be honest, I was ready to die. It's so uncomfortable to leave everything behind after living in a place where you have lived all your life. If someone had told me at that time that life at home would be so good in the future, they would not believe it even to death. Before Wenjuan and Jiyan could respond, Xing Xing, who was wearing a sapphire blue jacket and trousers, suddenly jumped into the old lady's arms. She grabbed her neck like a little tiger and yelled fiercely, "I won't beat her to death, I won't beat her to death." Jiyan and Wenjuan were stunned for a moment, then laughed. This boy was just learning to speak, and he didn't understand it half-heartedly. When he heard the word beat to death, he thought someone was going to beat the old lady to death. "Oh, my stars, you know how to protect your great-grandma at such a young age. What a precious little baby." Old Mrs. Lee was protected by her child, and her heart felt so hot that it turned into a puddle of water, and she kept calling her heart broken. Wenjuan also smiled and said, The fourth aunt said the day before yesterday that Seeing is most similar to my sister when she was a child. She has the same sweet mouth and can coax people. Jiyan sighed, looked anxious, and said, "This guy has taken away my job. What will I do in the future?" Mrs. Li and Wenjuan laughed harder. Only Seeing stared with big eyes, not understanding what happened. Muju leaned against the carriage wall, listening to the jokes in the carriage, and couldn't help but raise the corners of his lips. The Chinese New Year is just over a month away, and it's the busiest time in Zindu. Although you can't go out of the city for a walk like spring and summer, the cold weather can't stop the wealthy and idle people from having fun. So this family held a tea party, and that garden held a flower viewing party when there were 2 half-withered plum trees. I really have no excuse, so I just enjoy the snow and write poems. There are so many gatherings. Whether the host or the guests want to attend in a glamorous manner, it is indispensable to buy things. Men want new clothes, and women want dresses and jewelry. There is also a lot of paper, ink, pens, and inkstones for sale. The snack shops are booming, and the taverns and tea houses are also overcrowded. The Li family's carriage entered the city, and Wana returned to the Seeing family. Mrs. Seeing was thinking about her daughter when she suddenly heard that her daughter had brought her grandson back. She was so happy that she almost wiped tears. Even Seeing Ning quickly ran to the front door to greet him. Soon, the whole family got together and talked while eating oranges. Mrs. Seeing Wana fed her mother 2 baskets of oranges and said with a smile, "Mom, my sister-in-law said this basket of oranges was specially given to honor you. As for that basket of pears, you must not give it away, keep it to make pear soup to replenish your health." "Okay, okay," Mrs. Seeing became even more happy and nodded in response. In fact, when a woman gets married, the quality of her husband is secondary. The main thing is not to get involved with the unreasonable mother-in-law and the trouble-provoking sister-in-law. After all, men are out all day, and they only return to the back house at night. In case of those who take more concubines, the women will not even be able to see their husbands at night. But my mother-in-law and sister-in-law see each other every day. If they don't get along well, life will be really difficult. End of this chapter.